Alright, here we are inside the Toyota C-HR. This is the stock version, so it isn't the Koba, which has the added bells and whistles and features, including the leather seats, the heated seats, and a few other things on the inside, different wheels, etc. So this is the stock version, but this is the all-wheel drive version, as opposed to the standard two-wheel drive version, which sends all power to the front wheels. Now, when you come into the interior, first thing you'll notice is it's all fabric, which is okay, but I'll prefer obviously the leather heated seats that come in the Koba. The interior itself is quite cozy because it is a mini SUV, it's compact, and you might feel a bit tight in the back seats. So I will recommend, if you are sitting in the front, you'll definitely need to pull the seats at least sort of to this level. I can't do it now, but sort of there-ish to be comfortable for the people in the back to be able to put their legs in. Now, the one thing that really gets me about this C-HR is the infotainment system. Now, I'll do another video on it, but basically it's this 4.2-inch, very old touchscreen that is very laggy, doesn't have enough features, doesn't have CarPlay, and you can just see it's dated. It actually is the same system that they use in 2012 models. So we're talking going on a decade soon, and there's not even been an update here. So definitely something that Toyota could look into, and to implement CarPlay, which is something that everyone wants in these Toyotas. This system here is nice because it does have dual climate, and then there's a fair bit of storage out the front, 2 bottle holders, and then a decent amount of space on the inside. There is only one USB here, which plugs into the head unit itself. And then you have your 12-volt connector that goes inside here, and the cable runs along, as you can see with the dash cam. It does have 2 analog for the speed and then the rev counter, and then 1 digital little screen in the middle, maybe 2 inches, that is able to show your speed, your range, your average fuel economy, and a few other statistics there. Overall, it does feel quite comfy on the inside, especially when you're driving, which we'll get into in a moment. But it is a bit tight, but that's what you're getting this for. You don't want a huge SUV, you just want a small, compact little SUV, and this does just that. There are a few features that I think need improvement, such as the head unit, but hopefully in time Toyota will adapt to CarPlay and get a nice big screen that could fit here, because there is space for it. This is a huge sort of panel, but it's just a very small, old, dated screen that still has DVD, CD player, which basically no cars have nowadays, or not many. The Koba does have a much nicer interior, I will admit that, but it is still nice and cozy in here, and I will give it to Toyota. So now we'll just take it for a spin. Alright, so we're going to take the C-HR for a spin, see how it fares up. Now, we've driven it for a decent amount of time, done a few thousand Ks on it, so we can get an understanding of the car. This model, as I mentioned earlier, has a 1.2 litre 4-cylinder turbo engine, which is absolutely tiny for this type of vehicle. I know it's very light and it's basically a small type of hatchback thing, but it just needs a bit more power. You've got 88 kilowatts and 180 newton meters worth of torque, which is a bit too small. Now, driving this on the motorway, I've spent a bit of time in the middle lane trying to see how it could overtake, and it just struggles to get that power to go past. So definitely something that needs improvement in future is just to tack on, at least get it to 100 kilowatts. A lot of the competitors are holding it at 100 kilowatts of power for these small cars. And whilst I do understand that not many people would really fuss about having an extra 10, 20 kilowatts, but definitely something that's needed just for simple things like overtaking. Because this is the all-wheel drive version, as opposed to the two-wheel drive version, I have noticed a fair bit of traction improvements over the two-wheel drive version. So I'm not going flying around corners, but essentially when you are taking this around, there is a little meter on the screen that shows you how much is going to the front wheels and how much is going to the back wheels. And when you are going around steep bends or there is a bit of rain, the all-wheel drive system does kick in. But overall, 90% of the time it will be using just the front wheels. Let's say you're cruising, it doesn't need to send power to the back wheels, it'll just use the front. Saves fuel, and it's basically unnecessary to utilize the rear wheels if you're not using them. So definitely a smart system there that knows when to use which, and I like the little display that allows you to see that. Toyota claims fuel consumption is rated at 6.5 litres per 100. I'll give this person a wave. Now, I've been driving probably around 60 to 70% on the motorway, and the other 30 to 40% around urban city type driving, and I have averaged, I'll tell you the figure now, I'm on 7.7 litres per 100, and that's with a lot more motorway driving. So if you are going to do a lot more city driving, expect that number to drop to around the 9-10 litre mark, and because it is a small tank, you'll be needing to fill up at around 400 kilometres, which I think, given that this car is so light, which is probably the point of it, they could have chucked in an extra 5 to 10 litres in the fuel tank, because filling up every 400 Ks could be a little bit better. And now that I've got my decent fuel economy here, I fill up at around the 550 mark of kilometres. It could be a little more, but it is efficient enough to get around, especially because it is only 1.2 litres, so you would expect it to rev pretty hard, but this one, it does all right to keep the fuel figures low, even with the small displacement that it has. The ride itself is pretty comfortable. I've had 4 people in here with a decent amount of space, not too many complaints for the trip that we've done, and because the tyres, they're a decent amount of tread to them, and the profile is thick, so when you are driving it, it is comfortable, and the all-wheel drive system and the suspension works well together to just eradicate any annoyance that you get from bumps and ditches. And that's the one thing I've liked about this car when I'm driving it. I've been on a lot of pretty poor roads. In Sydney, or in Australia, we don't have the best roads around, so we basically have to make do with what we have, and it does very well to just glide over those ditches. I think that's one thing that this does well, and that's what you'd expect from a mini SUV. I know it's not really, a lot of people don't categorize these cars as SUVs, given that they're basically just hatchbackers stitched up, but this car does well to try and prove itself as essentially a little SUV. The handling is quite nimble because it's got the all-wheel drive system. It's definitely a big improvement over the two-wheel drive system, which we've had earlier and reviewed. It's not a huge difference that you're going to notice, and I always advocate to get an all-wheel drive over a front-wheel drive, but with this type of car, you're not going to be pushing it enough to be able to tell the difference. And given that this car basically is in front-wheel drive most of the time, the front-wheel drive version probably is the way to go to save yourself a bit of money. Unless you're taking this on sort of dirty terrain where you would want the all-wheel drive, then definitely I would recommend the all-wheel drive in that situation. Because it is fairly small, it would be difficult to fit more than one baby seat. You could probably fit 2 baby seats in the back, but it would be tricky trying to fit anything else back there. It would basically be your 2 baby seats and that's it, and it would be tight. And given that the boot isn't the biggest, it's going to be hard to fit 1 pram, let alone 2 in there, or the stroller or anything in the back, because the boot isn't the biggest. It could be a bit deeper and there just isn't enough space, but this isn't the car you would buy for the family. That's when you would move to the RAV4, the Kluger or Klugger, and the Prado. This is the smaller end car, and as opposed to the Corolla, you feel a little bit higher, a little bit more in control, have a bit more space around, but it is still light as well. It's light, it's efficient, it doesn't have an awful lot of power, but it's just a good all-rounder car. And you could compare it to a Corolla. It would be ideal if they did make this in a hybrid version. The Corolla hybrid and the Camry hybrid, you know, you're putting in 40 litres in those. You're getting a good amount of torque from the beginning thanks to the electric motor, and you'll still get around minimum 800 Ks on a tank in the city, as opposed to 400 here for putting in the same amount of fuel. So that's definitely a consideration when you're tossing up these sort of small cars that you're looking into, and because this does need to rev a bit more, it's not going to be as efficient as the hybrid, which can just use the electric motor to supplement any lack of power. But overall, this is a very nimble little car. It's a good urban rider. I'm just going to put that down. It does the job fairly well. Definitely not for a family, but for someone that needs a little city car to zip around in. It's got enough space. It's got plenty of features. The Koba probably is worth the extra thousands that you're going to be, only a few thousand more that you're going to be paying for it, but you've got the leather interior, you've got the heated seats, you've got nicer wheels, and it's just all around a nicer feeling to be in. Whereas this one, you can tell it's a little bit cheaped out here, and the infotainment system isn't that good, which doesn't change in the Koba, but a few little things where you just look into the Koba and think, all right, okay, that's definitely worth the extra money that you're paying. But this has been a nice little ride. It's been good fun to zip around in. Hasn't had any dramas or any, which it won't have for a long time. You've got a 7-speed auto CVT. It does come in manual. All the 7-speed CVT gearbox, which is an okay gearbox. You got to get used to the feeling of a CVT. This one is pretty good because on the motorway, revving in the 7th gear, if that's what you'd call it, it is quiet, and with the comfortable wheels, it's a comfortable car to have and to cruise in on long distances. So if you are traveling a lot for work, it is a good option to have. And the CVT I've found to be fairly good. It's always weird with the gear changes, if that's what you'd call them, in these CVTs, but I've found the automatic to be fairly good. My only criticism in terms of the engine here is just a bit more power. But apart from that, it's a nice little car. It's been great to zip around in. And I think just with some minor improvements, it could be a serious hit. It could take over the market in this mini SUV market because the styling is just unreal. And I don't think any of the competitors look as good as this one. Anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more videos and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe.